Running Sentences presents All Hail Zip Zog, Part 2, The Planning Phase. Rufus has been left alone to plan this new religion. This, however, only makes him nervous and worried that the whole God coming to talk to him was just an act of his imagination. But he still sets about making plans for a new religion because he's not sure what else to do. This is a work of fiction. Any names, characters, businesses, events, incidences, and situations within this story are completely fictional. Any resemblance to real people, or real stories, or real instances, or real life is purely coincidental. Copyright 2022, Michael Hunnery. All rights reserved. A week went by, and there was no sign of Zip Zog, the Almighty. Rufus could not decide if this was a good or bad thing, as he quietly moved about his apartment. He did not want to disturb his downstairs neighbor with any extra noise, and he had extra boxes around and extra things that had been delivered to him all about other religions. He found himself pacing up and down, playing with his lips as he thought all of this over. Could this mean that this man was fake or real? I mean, he hadn't shown up in a week, and, well, who knew with gods? But didn't gods also have instantaneous powers, so that they wouldn't really need to do all of this? I mean, ones that would instantly let things happen that needed to be done? Why did he need a prophet? Rufus shook his head, and then jumped slightly at the sound of the door being knocked on. He hurried over towards his front door, wondering who it could be. He rarely gave out his address to people, since he liked to be left alone, and as he got to the door, he peeped through the peephole to see Finn on the other side of the door. His heart stopped for a second. Had he given her his address? The whirling thought process in his brain could not come up with a definitive answer. It did warn him, however. There were many papers lying about the place that he'd been working on to get this so-called religion idea up and running, and they were all scattered about his living room along with some boxes. A moment of panic shot through him, to open the door or pretend he wasn't home. Another knock on the door had him grabbing the door handle before he realized what was going on and pulling it open. Finn, how nice to see you. What brings you to my terrible place of residence? I came to see if you were all right. You ran out of my bar and haven't been back. Yeah, sorry about that. I know you were joking and all of that, and I had a bad day and work and stuff. My world felt like it was crumbling, and there was a lot of stuff going on in my head. Sorry. Well, that is not good. Well, yeah, no, it isn't good, but it's work, and I do sometimes like it. So thanks for the visit, and I'm sorry. By the way, how did you get my address? Did I give it to you? Ryan did, and since I feel a little bad about my joke not working, I brought something to make up for it, if you'll let me in. Though posed as a question, Finn ignored him and pushed right past him, which caused a mini panic to go through him as he let her in and then hurriedly closed the door so that he could sprint back to his living room to clean up. Finn was walking over towards the kitchen side of the living room, while a panicked Rufus ran about collecting his loose collection of papers and boxes and sweeping them up into his arms as best he could in a terrible fashion. He was trying to hide them and move them towards his room at the same time, but he stopped when he saw the curious face of Finn looking at him with a raised eyebrow. Paperwork? It's all very complicated, and if I drop any of them that say religion, please know that this is all a thought experiment to better understand customers. Maybe? Ha. He couldn't think of anything else to say or do, so he grabbed what he could and went to his bedroom. A few papers slipped from his grip as he rushed into his bedroom and ran to and fro collecting papers and some of the boxes that had been left over and pushed them about his room and most of them under the bed. What are you doing? Rufus jumped at the sound of Zip Zog's voice and found the man sitting on his bed. He couldn't help but furiously look between his living room because the door was still open and, well, God was sitting on his bed. Can't see or hear me. You're fine on that front. Not taking God's word for it, Rufus went over and closed the door, then quickly came back over and sat next to Zip Zog so he didn't have to speak loudly. Yes, but she probably can hear me, and if I'm talking to nothing, how is that supposed to look? Yeah, you wouldn't look so good, to that person you have a crush on. I would protest that, but since you're either imaginary or a real god, you probably already know everything about me, without having to ask. Therefore, you already know that the papers are under the bed and are what you want to see or talk about. I need to attend to my friend and see how she's doing and what she's doing. He rose and headed for the door. You mean the woman that you have a crush on, or is it puppy love with you? So what if it is? Is there any problem with that? It isn't the worst thing in the world to like a person and not be able to express myself. I wish I could express myself, but it's the way things are right now. He headed out, having firmly, but not really all that firmly, expressed himself to Zip Zog, who began to make papers float to his hands so that he could read them. Rufus came out of his room and went straight over to the kitchen area to see that Finn was busy. She had a few pots and pans out and looked about ready to be cooking something. Yeah, I went a little bit overboard with trying to figure out how to do something nice for you, and went with cooking, because a nice meal is a nice meal, is it not? You could have done a crappy cake, or, sorry cake, or... No, I couldn't. Okay, then. His bedroom door creaked, and his attention was instantly snapped to it. Finn elbowed him, but he was already heading towards his room. Sorry, I think my room is haunted, part of this crappy apartment building and crappy apartment, which has been adding to my troubles lately. I will be back. So you're going into your bedroom? There might be a ghost? It might not be a ghost, but a higher spirit. Definitely a higher spirit of some sort that just will not leave me alone. He was trying to offer a grin to this, to soften the news, but he felt like it was not working, as she looked very puzzled, and he backed his way into his bedroom again. He stopped just inside the doorway, making sure that the door was shut. Zip Zog, what are you doing? I don't think any of your ideas are going to work out for what we need. Fine, but not right now. I have other things going on, and I'd like to live my life instead of being a prophet and dragged down into the hell of having to set up a religion. It's not hell. I think we should get this thing done and now. What are you, are you a god of mischief? You just come in at the right moment and tweak, and then throw everything up in the air and nothing works? Well, I might be, but probably not, but maybe. Rufus opened his mouth and then shut it again. There was no dealing with gods, even if they were imaginary, and so he left the room. Finn met him at his bedroom door when he came out again. She looked very curious, and he tried to put on another smile to put the situation at rest. Fake smiles do not suit you, Rufus. They don't? Well, that's too bad. So, what you making? He moved past, but she opened the door to his bedroom. He spun about and raised his hand to protest, but she had already gone in there. With a sigh, he gave up and decided to go towards his couch and sit down heavily to wait to see what would happen. She emerged a few seconds later. If you do have a ghost or some spirit or something, they don't seem to mind me, which is rather disappointing. I rather kind of wanted to see what one looks like. Unfortunately, it might only be interested in me. It keeps saying things about religion while I'm working. I thought that the religion was a thought experiment for work. Yeah, or the two might be getting tangled up in my mind. I don't remember anymore. She shook her head and went back towards the kitchen. He watched as she went through his kitchen, finding the rest of what she needed, and was set up cooking a meal. He got up several times to look over and to see if he could help where he could, but he was shooed away, and the whirlwind of activity came to a stop a few minutes later when she produced 2 plates of pasta and put them down on his dining table that was next to the kitchen. That looks pretty amazing. So, what's it called? Pasta agile all. Some say that it's great for helping things along. Oh, what things? Just eat, knucklehead. The two sat down and enjoyed the food, and with some small talk along the way. Rufus, who was never great at such forms of talking, looked down at his now empty plate, realizing he needed to come up with something to say, and soon after, because they were all done, and, well, pauses in conversation, while nice, never felt quite right. He looked over at her, sitting there with a bemused smile and playing with her hair. "So, are you ever going to be straightforward, or do I have to do that?" Forgive me for being a guy, but I'm pretty, maybe a little thick-headed, or just not smart, or just, what are you talking about?" In response, she stood up, took off her shirt, and then idly tossed it at him. "I'm bored of waiting for you to build up courage. So, since your room is haunted, it's the couch the next best place to have fun." Pulling the shirt off of his face, Rufus watched her saunter over towards the couch, and felt very, very compelled to follow. He moved a few short feet towards the couch where she'd stopped, and was waiting for him, and as he came up to her, she grabbed him, kissing him as he came within her grasp. It was a deep kiss that lasted a few seconds and left him dizzy, both in happiness and a need for a little bit of air. He nudged her with his nose and pulled her towards the couch. When they sat down, it felt like the clothing was going flying as they settled in with one another on the soft couch. In a flash of a mere minute, things were over, and the two were snuggling with one another on the couch, Rufus holding on just in case this was all a dream, and she was just intent on holding him. It was peaceful and nice, and it was probably going to end in a second. And as if on cue, a cell phone rang, and Finn disentangled herself, slipping from his grasp. She was over to her purse in a second, and wandered away with her phone to her ear. He sighed as he watched her go, noticing that she had some scars in her thighs, and a little pudge around her belly. He hadn't expected that, but in a way they were nice to see. Normal, sort of. He glanced away, and then noted that he had a bit of a stomach himself, and decided that would need to go. He sighed as he rolled off of the couch. Sorry, I have to go. The bar always has something going wrong, and that only I can fix." "Yeah, no problem. I hope it's all okay." "Oh, it will be fine. Still, I need to make sure that it isn't important, and that they are getting things right." She came over to him and gave him a kiss as he got up from the couch. It felt nice, and the crush of soft lips took him by surprise. And then it broke off, and she was scrounging up her clothes and throwing them all on with ease. Rufus found himself sitting back down on the couch as she waved goodbye and was gone. He sighed once more and got up. This was going to complicate matters with Zip Zog and forming a new religion, because he wanted her to be his center of attention, and, well, a religion was going to take up a lot of attention. Rufus poked his head into the bedroom, looking carefully about for the god. The room seemed dark and empty, but since he seemed to be the prophet of a mischievous god, he didn't intend to trust this man one bit. He didn't want to push the door fully open in case of ye old bucket trick where it would fall on his head, though there didn't appear to be anything up there, so he pushed the door open and jumped backwards, just in case, just to be extra safe. No bucket fell, and no god appeared. Rufus narrowed his eyes and stepped carefully forward into the room. Still nothing. Then he heard a bit of humming coming from his bathroom, and the last thing he wanted to do was burst in on a god in the middle of something, like a shower or whatever he was doing in there. And also, why would a god need to use such a place why would a god need to use a bathroom in the first place? The bathroom felt quiet when Rufus entered to see Zip Zog standing in the shower, probing at the dials. He looked over at Rufus as he entered. "Did you have fun with her?" "Yes, thank you. What are you doing?" "Trying to figure out how to make these things work. We don't often get to come down to earth and play with things." "I thought you were here for religion." "Stop playing. I thought you said you'd been here before." "Don't you make regular trips or something? Make sure that the people are being good to one another?" "Oh, no. We occasionally do get a pass to come down, but we can't really interact with things unless we have permission. During the Middle Ages, there were a few times where we came down to perform miracles, and, well, people weren't grateful. And then diseases happened because people didn't express gratefulness enough. Anyway, So we wound up creating rules that we don't check in on society unless it's all doom and gloom, and even then we're probably not there. Rufus took a few steps over towards the shower, grabbed the dial for the cold water, and spun it so that the water would come on. And when it spurted to life, he turned and walked out. He went over to his bureau in his room and began fishing out some clothes, running shorts and a t-shirt as well as underwear and socks, since he had not yet put on anything from his dilettante with the lovely Finn. He slid on these garments and thought, yes, his pudgy stomach was definitely in need of a workout, and to keep Finn around, hopefully. But this was interrupted by Zip Zog, who came in soaking wet. Well, that was kind of fun. Could you please dry yourself? I don't need water getting all over the place. Oh, fine. In a blink of an eye, this god-man went from completely soaking wet to dry, and then looked over at him sternly. What are you doing? We have work to do. I am going for a run. I feel the need to get into shape. You need your prophet to live a long, fruitful life, right? Maybe, hopefully. Please say yes to that. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, it was in the plans, sort of. We need to talk about your plans for the new religion. I don't think they will work. The things that you drew up and threw under the bed. Well, you can tell me where I went wrong while I go for my run. He stood up and was headed for the door to the bedroom. Are you sure you wouldn't feel weird worrying that people will see you talking to the plain old air since, well, I'll probably be invisible? I think there are fewer people out during the evening hours, and, well, hopefully they don't mind somebody talking to themselves. So no, I'm not worried as much about such things. He continued his journey towards the doorway from the bedroom to the living room and came to another stop. Did you leave the shower going, by the way? Maybe. With a shake of his head, Rufus went into the bathroom to turn off the shower before heading out. Outside, on the front entrance of the apartment buildings, Rufus came to a stop and was getting ready to stretch a little bit. He had no idea what he was doing, let alone if he could run very far or anywhere, but alas, it seemed like a fairly sensible thing to do to loosen one's muscles. Oh, I've forgotten all about the humans and their weird routines to try and entice the opposite sex into sticking around with them, or just to get them laid. Well, some people like that sort of things. And shouldn't you know about such things? Since you're a god, you helped create the people, you should know. Yeah, but people take it to weird places. I mean, I've heard of things like twerking, and from the description of other gods who have seen it, well, mating rituals. It's a bit like a mating ritual that animals do. I figured that humans were a bit beyond that, and twerking just comes across as, well, come look at me and my technically fat, rolling all the way around and all of that. Yeah, okay, well, I can see your point there, but, this isn't really criticizing my planning of the new religion, is it? Rufus finished what he felt like was enough of a stretch, and that had mostly been him stretching his arms a bit so that they felt slightly different, and then he began heading for the sidewalk. Zip Zog had not responded to this, and the jog started lightly, with Rufus unsure of what to do other than to slightly start running. But he didn't want to push himself hard, because an outright run would probably see him exhausted in a few minutes flat. No, a slow, steady pace to get him going, he thought, would at least let him survive beyond, hopefully, a 5-minute mark. Plus it was quiet aside from the humming of the god floating behind him. Rufus pressed onwards. So what is your problem anyway with my plans, Zip Zog? Well, you haven't formulated much of a church yet, and everything is digital this and that. People need to have actual experience with preachers and, well, maybe the prophet even. Oh, they will. My plan, though, is we need to get a following going, and then get a preacher. Then we can bring in the people for real to talk to and interact and whatnot. But I need, and I want, to be careful, as people are themselves careful, and don't want to run into, say, another Catholic child situation. Oh, that? Yeah, no, let's avoid that. Slow might be better way to do things on that front. Okay, good. So what else? Yes, it's all good, but what about rules? Rufus slowed down a bit, puffing a little bit, though the distance hadn't been that great and he'd not gone very far. We need to be open with rules to attract people, but we want to corral the ones that aren't listening to their holy books, not enlist new ones. Those types love rules that direct them into narrow corridors. We need both of them. We need both to prove that we are a real religion and that we need narrow rules and extravagantly open ones. He came to a stop, still slightly puffing. It had been a good semi-jog, and he certainly didn't want to press his luck, so with the minor achievement of having gotten out and run for about 10 minutes in one direction, he turned back around to head home. The jog back had gone well, with a few further exchanges of ideas. None worth really thinking about, as Zip Zog still seemed to assume, and to think that technology was on the bad side of things. Rufus knew that it wouldn't be easy to convince him otherwise, but this was a task that he would have to conquer, and at the right time. Right now, all he wanted to do was to fall onto a couch, exhausted, and he was making his way back up to his own apartment as quickly as he could while huffing and puffing. When he got inside, he did exactly that and fell onto the couch, pleased and surprised to find that Finn's scent lingered on the cushions, and fell fast asleep with that on his mind. When he awoke, Zip Zog had vanished off again, which suited Rufus fine. He didn't have any workable plans to actually make a new religion, and well, the ridicule for the start of such a thing, plus the calls of a potential cult, haunted him. There would be no easy way to get any of this done and to get anyone to believe in him, which is why he needed to vie for some time. This was the main priority in his mind as he drove towards work, mostly because it would be mundane and the same old, two things that he wished would go away about his job, but he also loved that about his job, since no one bothered him. The only other good thing about his job was the 45-minute drive. It gave him plenty of time to think, as long as there wasn't any traffic. His usual parking spot near the back of the parking lot was waiting for him, though there was also the surprise sight of his boss, to Rufus's disappointment. It usually meant that there was some error in sending an email that needed to be sent yesterday, and that would he please kindly fix it as of yesterday. Rufus could only sigh at the sight as he pulled into a spot, guarded himself against the unexpectedly annoying nasal voice that was about to greet him. He got out of his car and tried his best to be chipper, but the sudden appearance of Zip Zog behind his boss, Carl, threw all of that out the window. "Rufus, we have a severe problem." "Really? Why don't we go inside and you can explain all about it?" Despite himself, Rufus found himself shaking his head now at the sight of Zip Zog, who was putting up bunny ears behind his boss, Carl, and, well, he was trying to shake his head subtly no to stop Zip Zog, but this was not really going well. "Why are you shaking your head no? What is this? Do you want to get fired?" No, I thought I saw a hornet-looking thing near you, and, well, it wasn't, and I wasn't sure if it was or wasn't, and out of fear I just sort of froze up and shook my head no, like I was watching an accident happen, or... "What is it with people and telling me lies? Listen to me. Our hard drive has failed and people are saying there is no backup. Fix this at once." Rufus's mouth the word failed and his expression darkened. How? Why? What? Unless it was tied to the server, this should not matter much, and he had hopes for the best, since it was his boss who did not know anything about IT. He also hoped that Zip Zog was going to butt out of this situation. Yes, of course, Mr. Boss, Mr. Carl. Please lead the way." Carl glared and then began marching towards the office building that housed Corporate Big Talking, a business designed to help ease discussion between companies for a fee, of course. The elevator ride up to the third floor where the offices were hidden away was a speedy one. They were dropped off in the hallway and found themselves snaking their way through the building to the far corner, away from the more important businesses. I cannot believe that we're about to lose everything we've ever worked on forever. My business is about to go down the tubes because of a piece of hardware going boom. That is an astronomical issue, and I do have some questions. Was this just your computer that's having problems with data, or could you get your computer to work? I don't know. I'm not the tech person. I merely use it to get my job done. Carl stormed off ahead of him, huffing and puffing and probably wanting to blow something down. Rufus hung a few steps back to avoid any further blowback from whatever might fall into Carl's warpath. The anger carried them from the hallway of the building into the little hidden office lobby, a space that was dominated by a few chairs and a secretary without a desk. She did have a phone on a pedestal next to her, but other than that her laptop was on her lap, and she did her best to work this way. Carl steamrolled their way past the sight of this, ignoring that there was a customer sitting in one of the awkward waiting chairs. Rufus, a few steps behind him, stopped. Mr. Gastberry, I hope all is well with your business. You've had a small problem crop up. I hope we can sort it out quickly. And then I'm sure one of our fine salesmen will be with you shortly. Rufus threw a glance at Iris, the secretary, but she didn't seem to notice as she fought to keep her laptop in its position on her lap. Oh, thank you, Mr. Rufus. I'm sure you will tend to the problem shortly, and this will all go away. The man sort of stood up and gave a slight bow, which Rufus sort of ruefully returned as he turned and headed into the actual office space itself. After going through a maze of other offices that belonged to employees, they stepped into Carl's office and saw a smattering of 3 salespeople gathered around Carl's desk, looking at the computer with smirks. They did not need to be here, but because there was a problem, they needed to make sure that everything would work out in the end, even if it was likely that the problem was an isolated incident and that didn't affect their computers at all. The salespeople always seemed to think that they must remain united behind their boss. At least that's what Mo, the head sales rep, had kept trying to impart on Rufus, who could only shake his head. They just didn't want to work, and not that he was any better since he hid out in the basement with the other IT departments, doing little of any work. Having rounded around his boss's desk, Rufus dug out his phone and got it up and running to check the emails to see if the server company had sent any messages. There was nothing there, and as he reached the computer, the blue screen sitting on the monitor told him a lot. Okay, so from what I can see, this is your computer acting up and not our servers. But still, I need to test some things to make sure, so I will send up a new desktop and get it all sorted, and then I'll take this one downstairs. Are you sure? You swore you saw a hornet in the parking lot and that it was just about to sting me. Do you just look at this and suddenly it's okay? I said that because I thought I saw a hornet-like bug. I wasn't sure, and I was wrong. Now, if you'd rather, you can stay not working for the day, or I can try and get things running again. Carl sneered, then nodded yes as Rufus moved quickly to shut off the computer and get it all of the cables disconnected. Once done with that, he was quick to get out of the office where he did not like to be. He was soon down in the basement with the heavy tower that made up the heart and soul of a computer. It was old and ragged and should have been retired years ago. Alas, his boss wouldn't let such things happen, well, not while it still runs. The squeak of Carl's voice echoed in Rufus's ears upon thinking about that as he trudged his way to his little corner spot, passing by several other IT guys and gals who glanced up from their areas and recognized the slinking trudge past him. Got an old one, eh? Rufus kept going. Is Carl finally retired the old workhorse? No, he probably wants this back in salvage and back on his desk as soon as possible. Always the way with them, isn't it? He got back to his area and entered, and then dropped the machine slightly, gently, onto an abandoned extra desk across from his. It would need to be opened up, but since it was a pre-built machine, it would likely also have special screws a task which meant he had to go searching for a special screwdriver that lay hidden somewhere, lost in or on his desk. And when he turned to his desk, however, Zip Zog was sitting in his chair looking rather bored. "None of this looks religious to me." "You'd be surprised. Some consider this to be the pinnacle of life and all that it is all about." "Well, they're wrong. Now, how do you want to get this preacher? And what are you doing to start this religion other than half-baked plans?" "Well, what have I got? Well, I've got ideas. Why aren't you out and about whispering the word of Zip Zog in people's ears? That would certainly raise people's attention." "Will it?" "No idea if it will or won't. But probably, especially when they turn to see who it is saying such things and there's nothing there, they will certainly suspect that something is going on." "A perfect job for one who loves mischief, would you say?" Before Rufus could respond, in the blink of an eye, the god was gone, leaving him alone with this sad computer. A sad state which was soon interrupted by his cell phone ringing, with his boss demanding to know where and when he'd have a new computer to work with. Rufus hurried from his office space to the basement storage space that was tucked carefully away in the corner of the other side of the basement. A place that even IT techs feared to go, because it was stacked with everyone's gear, and everything was just everywhere inside there. No one knew whose was what until they scanned a barcode. The only hope of getting the right equipment was that barcode system that was slapped on each piece of tech. Rufus dipped and ducked and jumped his way around the room, using his cell phone as a light and also as a scanner for the right barcode. On a dark shelf near the back of the room, he finally found the right tower computer that he was looking for, or at least the right one that the barcode reader told him was the right one, and began the trek back out of this room. He'd gotten as far as the elevator, waiting for it to show up so that he could deliver this old, new, heavy, old tower computer up to Carl when Zip Zog showed up again, and did so right as he got aboard the elevator. "So the whole whispering thing, did it not go well?" The elevator jerked to life, slowly bringing them upwards. "It has its ups and downs, mostly lots of bad looks, and that didn't seem to work very well. Did you send me off on a wild goose chase?" "No, but I did get rid of you for a minute to allow me to work." Ouch, I see how it is. You shouldn't treat gods badly, by the way." Zip Zog then vanished again as the elevator came to a stop at the main lobby with the doors opening. A few people got on, and things seemed to be going back to normal as they went upward again. He did his best to get back into Carl's office with some speed, but lugging things about, especially an old computer tower, was a rather tiring task. Rufus found himself greeted by his boss at his boss's office door. "I'm losing business." "Apologies, it took me a few seconds to get this thing, and I'm not even sure if it runs yet." "I'm going to lose more business." "Carl, you spend your entire time cruising the internet, clicking on ads. You occasionally call a meeting to talk about numbers, because your accountant tells you to get your numbers up." I should fire you?" "Okay, do you want this computer set up or not?" Carl could only nod and let Rufus pass. Work was not complex by any means, and Rufus did not want to spend any more time than he had to up here, but Carl kept a careful watch over his shoulder, slowing him down. "Are you done yet?" "Now I am just about done. I do need to run a few checks on the computer to make sure that it runs correctly, and all the applications you need are there. It will take a few more minutes. Then you'll be free to wander the internet again." "There is something different about you these days, Rufus, and I don't like it." Religion, I think? Yeah, that about sums it up for me." "What?" Carl recoiled away from Rufus, who was busy booting up the computer and making sure that it was all right. So far, so good, at least for the computer. By the way, Carl, how do you feel about religion?" "I feel nothing. It's bad to talk about it unless it is a client that insists on talking about it. You can't sue me for not talking about your religious beliefs. I don't want to hear them. La 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 la. Now there's a reaction I did not expect. Getting people to believe in our religion is going to be much harder than I thought. Well, no, it's going to go about exactly as I thought. Not well at all. He finished up his work and left Carl, who was still saying la 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 la, and plugging his fingers into his ears to ignore everything. After that little journey, Rufus had spent the rest of his day working down at the IT department, hoping desperately that his boss would not call him again. And so it was. His day of work on trying to get data from the old hard drive of Carl's old computer and trying to get the old computer back and running had not been great. The motherboard had burn scars, and there was more dust than was generally good for such devices. Even dust bunnies never got this bad. But he'd also learned something. Work and religion were no-nos, which he should have already known, but somehow had slipped his mind. It was worth the lesson, though, as he plodded back towards his car, that religion wasn't easy unless there was a cult-like personality. But those never popped up to make things easy. The drive home made Rufus very, very sleepy, and he didn't even bother paying attention to the fact that Zip Zog was now, again, next to him. He just sat there and let the road go by until he reached his exit and cruised through the streets, until his apartment building loomed into sight and he came awake again, the sense of life sliding just about back to what he was used to, confirming that he was still alive. Rufus parked his car, locking it and double-checking that it was locked, and that the wheel lugs were on tight. If someone were going to take the tires, it would be a lot of work to get to them. And, well, there had been rumors of tire thieves and, well, catalytic converter thieves roaming the streets lately, and, well, he did not exactly want that. He was satisfied that his car was slightly safe now, and began to his walk across towards the building. He was greeted by the sight of his friend, Ryan, coming bounding up the sidewalk, looking excited. It was soon upon him as he stepped up to the building entrance. Rufus, I need to talk. Ryan, you don't need to say my name. I know you know me and what my name is. You don't have to keep... Sorry, I got all excited about an idea I had, and, well, you figured into it, and I just had to say your name. Well, I figured into what? And does it involve getting massively drunk and going streaking again? Because that did not go well for us last time. No, it is about your religion problem. Okay. What about that? I want to help you. Rufus felt like he had not heard correctly, but he was sure that he had, and instead of trying to figure this out, he just turned and went over to the gated door to his apartment building and unlocked it. He was sure that Ryan would provide some great insight into what he meant, but out here, Rufus did not really want to hear it. Ryan, of course, followed him up the 3 floors. So how exactly do you want to help me with my God problem? Rufus glanced about to see that, Zip Zog was right behind them, and was looking rather curious at what was going on. You said that this God wants a new religion or something like that. Yeah, he visits me and wants me to bring lost souls who have strayed from their religious text as they are picking and choosing which bits to follow. Why? What are you up to, Ryan? Well, I figured you would need someone, if you catch my drift. A person that is able to speak and has a bit of charm, charisma maybe. They're able to capture everyone's attention with few words. I don't think there will be many young ladies joining our religious group. There may be some older married ones, probably. But, I don't think... They'd clambered up the last 2 stories, and Ryan did not seem the slightest bit fazed by what Rufus had told him so far. He was still nipping at his heels, like a puppy dog. But you don't deny that I can be charismatic and can win people over, right? Oh, yeah, you do have a bit of a rough charm to you, but I don't know that it's good enough. Please just give me a try. I can preach to you all night about how recycling might be the biggest scam in history. Rufus could clearly see that Zip Zog in the background was nodding his head furiously yes. He wasn't sure what the yes was about, but he was being surrounded by silly people, and the only thing he could think to do was go up the stairs faster in the hopes that none of it would follow him. He got to his apartment door with both Zip Zog and Ryan hot on his tail, and upon seeing his front door, breathed a sigh of relief that Finn wasn't around waiting to come see him, which ruled out having a tough conversation about what was going on, which was good. Unfortunately, that also meant that he was going to have to listen to Ryan, and probably Zip Zog, as he got his key out to the door. Rufus charged his way into his apartment and into his living room, spinning about to face Ryan, who he left to close the door. The man walked in looking rather excited and hyper. "You have to let me join and become your preacher savior person, your preacher to the masses." "Ryan, no, this is madness. You don't want to lose out on everything you already have. People will start screaming cult, leader, killer, or a variety of names at you, and at me, and at maybe Finn if she winds up getting stuck into this. I can't let you go down this madness road that I'm going down, because I've gone mad." "Oh, you're not mad, just inspired. By the way, have you seen this godlike figure recently? We haven't really had a chance to talk about him. Oh, and if he is just imaginary, well, that's that much more interesting, don't you think, for a religion?" Rufus glanced over to the couch, where Zip Zog had gone and sat down, and turned on his daytime soap operas. The god looked over at them as Ryan looked over at the couch. "Holy shit! There's a guy watching TV. When did he get here?" "Ryan, meet Zip Zog the god. He's a mischievous asshole of one, but one nonetheless, and he's the one who started off this mess that I'm now in. And I have to say, I'm rather slightly glad that someone else can actually see him. It does open up a lot of other questions, though." Ryan strolled over to Zip Zog and stuck out his hand to offer it to shake. The god, Zip Zog, rose from the sofa seat in a floaty manner and produced a piece of paper. "I have heard that you want to be a part of our little religion. If you'll sign everything away..." Rufus charged across the room to try and grab the paper away before Ryan could sign anything remotely silly, like actually signing the paper. But the paper disappeared in a second without anything actually happening. "Oh, do relax, Rufus. I was only joking, though I will welcome any lost souls to our new church, my church about me. Please, let me teach you all about it, Mr. Ryan." Zip Zog had Ryan turned around and held him by the shoulder as they floated from the apartment. End of part 2 of All Hail Zip Zog. Thank you for listening.